Today we're going to be talking about something that really does apply to real life. It's called simple interest. Can anyone tell me where you think interest might be a bad thing? When dealing with money, sometimes you have to pay money back. Think about bills, okay? If you put a bill onto a credit card and you don't pay it back on time, guess what they do? They give you an interest fee and they say next month you have to pay more than what you were planning to pay originally. Okay, so that would be when interest would be a bad thing. Can anyone think of when interest might be a good thing? Okay, how about like money investments? If you invest your money into like a bond or some kind of a share, you put your money into there and your hopes are to maybe double your money or at least increase your money, okay? When we put our money into the bank, they sometimes will give us an interest rate. And they'll say, listen, because you're putting your money and keeping it here in our bank, we'll give you a little bit of interest back. A lot of times it's like 1% or 2%. It's very small. But because we have given our money to the bank and we've left it in there, they are able at that point to kind of use our money and they try to do investments, okay? So then when we take that money back out, a lot of times we will have interest where our money has increased some, okay? So today we're going to talk a lot about interest. There's a formula that I want you guys to go ahead and write down. So go ahead and put this in that cloud that's on your notes. Our formula for today is called I equals PRT. I want you to pull out your red pens and go ahead and fill in this section on your notes. So there's 4 different parts to this formula. The first one is the I. What does the I stand for? Interest. Okay, that's what we were kind of just talking about. That's how much money you make or how much money you owe. It could mean either of those things. What does the P stand for? The principal. The principal is your starting amount of money that you're depositing or that you need to borrow. The R, what's that stand for? The rate, okay? So please make sure that you've written this part down right here. It is a percent, okay? So the rate will always be a percent, but we've just got to make sure that we change that percent to a decimal. Very good job. And the last thing, T stands for time. The one thing I want you to really focus on and make sure is your time must be in years, okay? So if it says the time is 4, that means 4 years. Well, let's imagine instead that they say the time was 6 months. If somebody wrote down that it was 6, they would think that meant 6 years. So instead, 6 months is what part of a year?
1/2.
It's a half of a year because 6 months out of 12 months, and if you were to reduce that, then that would be 1/2 of a year, okay? So just make sure whenever you see the time for the simple annual interest, it's always got to be in years, all right? So let's go ahead and just kind of focus on this thing. A $500 deposit earns 6% simple annual interest for 4 years. I want to identify what these 3 different parts are and kind of name them. So, as I said, one of them is interest, one of them is principal, one of them is rate, and one of them is time. Let's do the easiest one right here. What do you think 4 years symbolizes? Interest, principal, rate, or time? Time. Let's write that down. This is our time, okay? Let's go up here to the 6%. Do you think that's the interest, principal, rate, or time? Why is it the rate? How'd you know that?
Because it says a percent.
Because it's a percent. So your percent's always going to be a rate. This is the trickiest part. This says a $500 deposit. What do you think that is? It's our principal, okay? Because what was it that our definition told us the principal is? It's the starting amount. So we started off with $500 that we deposited into the bank, okay? So this is going to be kind of like how problems will be set up. You've just got it. The hardest part of today is identifying, is it the principal, rate, interest, or time? Let's go ahead and start with this first example. An account earns simple annual interest. Find the interest earned and the balance of the account. So we're going to start, we know we need to find the I, P, R, and T. I want you to go ahead and write that there underneath. What we're doing right now, once again, as I said, the hardest part is identifying what's the I, P, R, and T. Do we know what the interest is yet? No, it says find the interest. So we're just going to put a little question mark there. Why? Because we don't know what that is yet. Do we know what the principal is? What's the principal? $500, okay? Because that's our starting amount. We know we started with $500. The rate. Do we know what the rate is?
Yes.
What is it?
3%.
3%. Now, if you remember, we said the rate has to be changed to a what?
Decimal.
A decimal. What would 3% be as a decimal?
0.3.
Remember, this is where it's at. It goes over 1, 2. What would it be? 0.03. And do we know the time? 3 years. Once again, always make sure it is in years. Okay, so once again, that was the hardest part because now all we're going to do is plug things into a formula. What was the formula I taught you at the beginning of the lesson? I equals PRT. Go ahead and write that down. All we're going to do now is plug things in. Do we know the interest? No. So just put an I. Do I know the principal?
Yes.
What is it?
500.
$500. Do I know the rate?
Yes.
What is it?
0.03.
Good job. Thank you for telling me to change it to a decimal. And do I know the time?
Yes.
What is it?
3 years.
3 years. So now, in order to find my interest, what do I have to do? All you do is you're going to multiply those three things together. All right, guys, as you did that, what did you get for the interest? $45, okay? So now it asks me to do another thing. It says find the interest, which we did, and the balance. The balance means how much money do they have now? So they put in $500 to the bank. They earned $45 interest. How do I figure out what my ending balance would be? You just add the two of those together, okay? So guys, what is 500 plus $45? $545. And that is what the new balance is that you have. Problem B is very similar to that. So we're going to go ahead. The first thing that you've got to do is identify those different parts. I, P, R, and T, because our formula is I equals PRT. Harmony, help me out. What is the interest?
We don't know.
We don't know it yet. What's the principal?
$300.
Okay, because that's our starting amount. That is the principal. What's my rate?
5%.
And change that to a decimal.
0.05.
Very good. And the final thing, what is my time?
9
Okay, 9 months. What do I want my time to be in?
years.
Years. So that's 9 months out of how many total months are in a year?
1/3.
12. Can that be reduced
1/3.
to, not 1/3,
3/4.
3/4? And I'm just going to tell you, it's really a lot more simple if you have these turned into a decimal to plug into a calculator. What's 3/4 as a decimal?
0.75.
0.75 means the same thing as 3/4 or the same thing as 9/12, okay? So 0.75 of a year is 9 months. Now we're going to go ahead and start with our formula. Harmony, what's our formula?
I equals PRT.
Very good. Now plug in what we know. Do I know my I?
No.
So we'll just keep it as I. Do we know our P?
Yes.
What is it?
300.
Good job. What's my rate?
0.05.
Thank you for telling me it changed to a decimal. And finally, the amount of time?
0.75.
0.75 years. All right. Multiply all that together, and this is going to help you find your interest. Okay, Harmony, what's my interest?
$11.25.
Excellent. $11.25. So, once again, you put your money, $300 into the bank. They tell you we're going to give you 5% interest. After 9 months, you have now earned $11.25 for basically doing nothing, just for not spending your money and letting the bank borrow it. But now I'm wondering, what is my final balance? Who knows what that would be? Brody, what is it?
$311.25.
Okay, how did you figure out that your balance was $311.25?
I added that to $300.
That is correct. All he did was he added his starting amount to what his interest was, and he got $311.25. Good job. For number 2, it's asking us now just to find something different. Beforehand, we were finding what the interest is. Now we're going to be finding the rate, okay? It's very much doing the same thing. It's just plugging in things to different things, all right? So let's go ahead and start with I, P, R, and T. Just the girls. What's my interest? $100. Ladies, what's my principal? $1,000. I started off with $1,000. What's my rate? It's a question mark. We don't know what that rate is. And what's my time?
4 years.
4 years. Good job. Since it's in years, we can leave it just as a 4. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and start every time with our formula. What's the formula?
I equals P R.
All right, good job. Boys, what is the I? $100. So now I'm not trying to find that interest. I already know it. Boys, what's the principal? What's my rate?
Nothing.
So we'll keep it as an R. Remember, in the end, we want our rate to be a percentage, so I keep it as an R to help me remind myself R means percentage. Time, I'm going to multiply that by 4. Okay, so drop down that equal sign because remember, you want to always try to line up the equal sign so it's nice and straight and neat. There's nothing I can do on the left, so I'm going to drop down $100. Is there any work I can do on the right side? Yes. What's 1,000 times 4? 4,000. So still drop down your multiply by R. Now, this is just similar to other problems. Your whole goal is to get the variable by itself. What's not allowing the R to be alone? Okay, what about the 4,000? Multiply by 4,000. So Javaria, how do I get rid of multiply by 4,000? Divide by 4,000 because we want the R to be by itself. So we're dividing by 4,000 on both sides. This will cancel out. What's 100 divided by 4,000?
0.025.
0.025. Now, as we remember, for rate, we want that to become a what? A percent. So let's move that decimal over, and what's my final answer? 2.5%. Very good. For problem B, you are also going to be finding the annual interest rate. So I want you to go ahead and put it off. IPRT. I want you to identify what each of those are and then plug them into your formula, okay? Let me have you and your partner go ahead and work on this together. All right, as I just walked around, I saw a lot of people with the correct answer. So let's just talk about interest was $1,750. The principal was $350. We didn't know the rate yet, and the time is 2.5 years. So as you plugged that in, I saw $1,750 equals $350 times R times 2.5. We drop down the left side. On the right-hand side, there's some work I can do, right? What can I do? All right, you're multiplying this number by that number. When you do that, what do you get?
875R.
Okay, 875R. How do I get that R by itself? Divide by 875 on both sides. This cancels out, and what do I get? 0.02. And remember, we want to change that to a percentage. What do we get? 2%. How many of you got 2%? Good job, guys. If there's any questions, let me know. Raise your hand. I want to answer them. Next problem, we've got the same kind of idea, but this time it's asking us to find the what? The time. So I want you and your partner to go ahead and work on this together. All right, so I went ahead and I put down what the IPRT was. A couple people had forgotten to change that 2% over to 0.02 when they plugged it in. So just be careful with that. You don't want to forget that part. I equals P times R times T. Now, once again, you're just starting to plug things in. $100 equals $800 times the rate, which is 0.02, times the time. So $100, what is 800? Because we can multiply those two together. What is 800 times 0.02? 16t. Get t by itself, so you divide by 16. And what do you get? 6.25. Now here's what I saw a lot of people do. What's wrong with that? I'm not finding the rate. What am I finding? The time. So how long did it take them? 6.25 years. So always make sure you're looking carefully for what it is the question's asking for and that your units say that. If you're looking for interest or principal, you want it to be money. If you're looking for rate, you want it to be percent. If you're looking for time, you want it to be in years. Okay? How many of you were able to get 6.25 years with your partner? Great job. Okay? Final problem of today. You will be doing this the same exact way. The difference is I'm not saying this is your I, this is your P, this is your T, or this is your R. You guys have to go ahead, read this, and find your I, P, R, and T. Okay, go ahead and work with your partner and try to find that answer. You borrow $600 to buy a violin. The simple annual interest rate is 15%. You pay off the loan after 2 years. How much interest do you pay? Do we know our interest?
Yes. No.
We don't know it yet, okay? So that's a question mark. Do we know our principal?
Yes.
Yes, what is it? Okay, remember the principal is the starting amount. I started off by buying or borrowing $600. Do I know my rate?
Yes.
What is it?
0.15.
15% changed to a decimal is 0.15. And do I know how long?
2 years.
It's going to take me 2 years. Now, as long as you have identified those 4 things correctly, this shouldn't be too bad. I equals PRT, so we're going to take our principal, which was 600, multiply it by the rate, which was,
0.15.
and multiply it times the time.
2.
Okay, what'd you guys get for your interest? $180. Okay, so in the end, you paid $180 for interest. Homework for 6.6 is over this. There's 8 problems. You do not have to do it tonight, but if you wanted to get it over with, you could. But this is Thursday night's homework.